Good evening. Today is March 27th, 2024, and this is The Struggle. Good evening. I'm Dr. Michael Eisinger from the Department of History and Poli-Sci at Fresno City College, and tonight we're going to do something a little bit different. And if you've been a regular listener to the show, you know that every week we do something a little bit different. About a year or so ago, we were doing a phone-in show, and a guy called in and says, "Man, keep doing what you're doing." And I said, "We do something different every week?" Because I know. So I feel okay about it. So tonight, I'm going to do something that I really wanted to do because, as I mentioned repeatedly since the middle of February, one of my favorite times of year here in Fresno, of course, is a 2-week block, the first 2 weeks of March, that we lovingly call the Rogue Festival. And the Rogue Festival is a fringe festival based on, of course, the original Fringe Festival, which is out of Edinburgh. And this is a place where acts come that may have, and it's not juried, nobody picks the acts, they just, you apply, you get drawn by lottery. Some of the side venues maybe are a little more selective, but most of it is you get in. If you get lucky enough to be drawn, you get to be on stage, and it is one of my favorite things. This year I think we did 30 different performances over the course of 5 or 6 days, and it was absolutely wonderful. And one of the things that I actually saw 3 times was a 35-40 minute film called Sandwichland, and it was written, directed, and produced by Andrew Champagne. And it, from the moment the first image showed up, which looked to me like the menu from an old VCR, to the first notes of the soundscape, which completely transported me, I knew I was in for something special. This is not a home movie. This is not something that some drama class put together. This is an amazing film, and the best way I can describe it is that David Lynch discovers the Tower District, and that essentially is my take on it. They may argue, the cast and crew may argue with me on it, but that is my take on it. As I said, I have seen it 4 times, 3 times during Rogue. Kim and I went and saw it 3 times, and then last Saturday I went and saw it again by myself because I just could not get past it. It is surreal. It is funny. It is visually an absolute treat, juxtaposing, sometimes very rapid cuts between black and white and color, between stuff that's out of focus and blurred, and you're not even sure what it is, and the noise to make you not sure what it is at all, and then other scenes that are crystal clear or very, very long, drawn-out scenes that let you really understand what the actors are thinking. It is an absolutely marvelous little film, and I have told everybody that I know, everybody that I meet, that if they ever, especially if they're from Fresno, especially if they're from the Tower District, like we are, that they have to see this. And so last Saturday I was at the showing at Labyrinth, at the Labyrinth Collective, and the entire cast was there, as well as a very appreciative audience. And I asked Andrew, "What are you doing on Wednesday?" And he said, "I think we're coming on your show." So I want to bring, we're going to bring in several people, but first I want to bring to the mic, I want to bring Andrew Champagne. He's the writer, director, and producer. Dorian Follansby, I apologize.
No.
I'm horrible with names anyway. Who plays the one lone female in the, it's like, don't you know any other women? No, anyway. It's a very small cast, and it's supposed to be. I mean, you only need a few points of reference for this film to work. And then Brendan Mastachola. I almost had it right.
Don't worry about it.
I even wrote it phonetically and then messed it up. Who is the male lead against Dorian's female lead. And then later we'll bring Tosh Martin in. Tosh plays an amazing character and is also involved in the soundscape and some of the editing. So we'll bring him in later when we talk about the production of the movie. So Andrew, Dorian, and Brendan, welcome to The Struggle.
Hi.
Hello,
thanks.
Mike.
Hi there.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, glad to be here. Thank you so much.
Let me start with Andrew. Why?
Well,
all right. First, and that is a very broad question. But first of all, before we get into all of the details and stuff, is what in the world made you wake up one morning and go, Rogue's coming up, let's make a movie? It was like, was it a Spanky and Our Gang moment of let's get the gang together and put on a show, or why?
Well, so I think that's I feel like that's a pretty simple question to answer. So Brendan and I, and Tosh, we've collaborated on several projects, maybe the span of 10 years, maybe. It's been a while. And we've always done stage shows, and I think we all felt that we were in a place where we had the resources, the very limited resources that we had, to create something visual that we could keep. Because I think one of the biggest bummers of doing stage shows was once they happen, they exist in your memory, and I think we wanted something that could last, could potentially travel to other cities, could be shown in different places, different venues, and I think in a miraculous way we accomplished that.
So it is a very wonderful job of storytelling. The description was something about sandwiches, depression, relationships, and mine.
Yeah, and that's why you never have me write the synopsis.
So that's why I was going to ask. Maybe you don't want to take this question. Maybe we'll go to Brendan or to Dorian. But the story, was it a story that you had that was fully formed when you got started, or was it a story that kind of evolved? The story, not the specifics, but the story, was that a clear vision when you started, or did it unfold as you made the movie?
Nothing is ever clear when I when I started. It's I think Brendan could possibly add an addendum to it, this particular, but really, my process is there's maybe 5 ideas, and I write maybe about 10 pages for each idea, and I pick the one that resonates with me the most on an emotional level, because that's really, I think, the foundation of a good piece of work. Is there something, maybe it's not something we can fully comprehend, but can we feel it? And I think the story, I wanted to tell the story of 2 people. I didn't necessarily want it to be a romance.
I'm not sure that it is.
No, yeah.
And that's
yeah.
Because honestly, and I'm going to come back to YouTube in a minute about it, but I was never, as I said, I've seen it 4 times now, and first time I thought it's working towards a romance. Mm-hmm. There are romantic moments, but I don't see it ever going. I don't think either character has the ability to go to the next level. I think they have to remain these 2 very isolated, even though they can run side by side, they're still separate. And so I don't think it is a romance.
No.
Although it could be seen as such.
Yeah, there's been much debate.
Among the 4 of you, right?
Yeah, well, yeah. I think Brendan considers it more of a romance. I consider it sort of an anti-romance, which is really a reflection of all my romances.
It generally is.
Yeah,
you write what you know.
but basically the deep desire to want to connect with another individual, and I think in our current state of the world with social media, it's a lot of noise, and it's a lot of people talking at each other and not with each other. And so I think the general purpose of the film was to sort of emulate that deep desire, but also the frustration of not being able to fully connect. And I think that's what the objective of the film for me ultimately became.
Brendan, you got to play one of these characters.
Yes, I did.
You said in one of the Q&As that I attended. Excuse me, phlegm. This damn blasted hay fever is killing me.
It's the spring.
Last 2 days, all I do is just coughing up phlegm. You said at one of the Q&As that you didn't know that you could play this role, but that Andrew told you could, so you trusted him. How much of because how much of the character, and I'm going to ask both of you this, how much of the character is Brendan, and how much is Andrew being channeled through Brendan? Because the character that you played, which is just enough off center to really be able to make you have to stop and think what your motivations are for almost everything that you do in that film. You do a really good job of portraying that I'm not quite on the mark, right? You know, it's like you aim and you go, you just miss it every time. That's how I viewed that character. So if that was what it was intentional, was that?
No, you're right.
Was that the?
There was a lot of the characters are often talking past each other, and they're trying to get something across, and maybe they don't even know what they're trying to get across to the other person because they're so wrapped up in their own head. And that could kind of make it a little difficult when you're doing a dialogue scene that's not necessarily supernatural, very natural, going back and forth.
Yeah, not supernatural.
Yeah, not supernatural ghost. Well, this movie.
Which does he mean?
There's a ghost.
But,
kind of.
Different film. Although there's that shot with the girl. Who knows what that is?
I don't know. What is that? No. How much of it is me? Okay.
And how much is Andrew?
And how much of it is Andrew's version of me? And how much? Okay, so Drew and I have been working together for years, like we said. And I've always been more of a behind-the-scenes kind of guy. And then we started doing, he started doing stand-up comedy first. And then there's the whole, this thing called Twatties, which was a live comedy show we were doing. And he asked me to do stand-up comedy. And for weeks I was like, no, I have no desire to do this. I don't like being in front of people. But people were like, nah, just give it a shot. And I figured, well, the greatest comedians in the world, they bomb. How bad could it really be if I bomb? And I found out that it can be very bad when I bomb.
But the sun comes up the next day. That's the key. I remember the very first moment that I ever spent on the radio, this is back in college radio, back in the late 70s, was dead air because the guy in front of me deliberately set me up to fail in the first moments I was on. Literally, I sat down and there was nothing to play.
Yeah, it sucks when you're being set up to fail. Like, they introduce you wrong on purpose.
But then after that, right, my pants, when I was an actor years ago when I was in college, my pants fell off on stage. And it was opening night. There was a reviewer there, and the reviewer wrote, if the too big pants sequence wasn't intentional, it should be. And the director said, leave it in. I had to drop my pants on cue.
That's good directing.
Yeah. But it was so bad, I ended up shredding that first pair of pants because every time I had to drop them and they got ripped, and so I had to get a second pair of pants because so after that, you can't really be embarrassed. So, I mean, I get it. You can bomb, but it's okay.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I mean, you tell yourself it's okay, and then you have 5 or 6 drinks, and you commiserate.
Well, I'm glad that he did convince you to do this because you did.
It was a lot of fun, and he's a great director, and he gives you a lot of leeway on creating the character. He's got a vision, and he knows where he wants you to be in that scene, and he kind of helps you find it. We didn't have a ton of time to rehearse. So it was a lot of on-the-fly stuff. We'd get a little bit of time on the day before shooting.
Andrew, how long did it take to actually make this film? It's about 35 minutes long. How long did it take you to actually film and then to post-production?
3 months.
Total? Mm-hmm. How long was the filming?
I want to say 2 solid months, and then the editing process. So I typically start editing as we have a night of shooting immediately. The next day we drop the footage into the computer and I start putting sequences together, because if I had not done this with this particular film, it would not have been made on time.
Yeah.
It really did help.
Yeah, no, it helps, and I think that's going to be my process from now on.
Did the deadline help?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'm somebody who needs a deadline, or unless it won't get finished, I will change and mess with things into oblivion. Yeah.
Doreen, you have probably the widest range of performance in the film, because you not only have all the interaction with Brendan's character. Do those characters have names? I don't even remember if there were in the credits.
Nope.
I didn't think so.
Not like given names, but
it was intentional.
I mean, we have names in the credits, but they're not like names that you would walk around with.
And in the credit sequence, everyone's like, "Wow, like that was a twist," and I was like, "It really was just because we had no other names to refer to the characters." But it ended up being kind of, it worked.
It works on an archetype.
On an archetype, yeah. Doreen was very much this, angelic, symbol of fertility, and I think that's a good way to joy. There's a sadness to her, but she doesn't really let it overcome her. There are many, and that's why I say you have the widest range, because you have the almost innocence when you're knocking on the window and you got your puppy with you and you're trying to get his attention in the coffee shop. There's that optimist, then later admitting that you were making stuff up just to get his, so that he'd like you,
just to impress him.
Just to impress him. But then you have that whole other set of scenes where I don't know if it's a divorce or a breakup or whatever, but a former lover shows up banging on your door, screaming and hollering, and there's a great deal of emotion there, and then the snake. Well, at least that's what I call it.
Well,
it took me a minute.
There's
a two-headed monster in the film.
There is a two-headed monster, and what we're going to do is we're going to take a real quick break, and we will come back and we will address with Dorian exactly the two-headed monster, and then we will go from there. You're listening to The Struggle on 88.1 KFCF.
On Saturday, April 6th, an important public forum entitled United Against Hate will be held on the campus of Fresno City College from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. The event is dedicated to stopping acts of hate and violence in our communities. The keynote speaker will be California Attorney General Rob Bonta, along with numerous breakout sessions hosted by local leaders. Yard signs and bumper stickers with the Stop the Hate, Be the Love message will also be distributed. This important event is being co-sponsored by the San Joaquin Valley Media Alliance, the Community Alliance newspaper, Fresno City College's Social Justice Center, this radio station, and dozens of other community organizations. United Against Hate on Saturday, April 6th will be held on the campus of Fresno City College from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. The event is dedicated to stopping acts of hate and violence in our communities. For more information, please visit FresnoAlliance.com.
And we are back with The Struggle on 88.1 KFCF. Right now I'm talking to Andrew Champagne, the director, writer, and producer of Sandwichland, as well as the two leads, Brendan and Dorian. And we were about to talk about one of the dream sequences with Dorian. There's a series where, and again, I've mentioned Lynch once before, but this reminded me so much of, if we're in a dream, whose dream is it, and who is the dreamer? And there's a section of this film that reaches that. And there's a certain level of surrealism. There are costumes involved. You end up in a clown costume, basically acting as a mime. There's a whole fertility. There's all kinds of stuff that's involved. But at one point with it, you are wrestling with or encountering a double-headed sex toy. And And
it's pretty intense.
Yeah, and you're eventually you slap it around and you seem to defeat it. I seem to. I don't think it's clear.
Yeah.
And so it's like, did she or did she live? Because there's a direct reference back to Brendan's character who has a phobia, and so the combination of the two and so. First of all, what were your thoughts when Andrew said, "Okay, here's what we need for this scene"?
I said, "You can get that on Amazon." And also, it's coming out of your pocket.
Well, as long as it's not going into his pocket, it's all right. But anyway,
there's no room.
I can, I guess. Go ahead. So no, I mean so I'm just curious as to what were your thoughts when he first proposed this scene, and what were your thoughts going into it, and what were you thinking as you were slapping this snake around?
Well, I have been called by others a rogue veteran. I have done things. The things I have done.
Can we talk about it on the radio?
Yes, actually.
Oh, okay.
Captain Scurvy, he, eating fire in lingerie, that kind of thing for his shows. So the things that I have done, this was within the realm. And so as an actor, it is our job to show up, not bump into the scenery, and say your lines to the best of your ability, and beyond that, you do what the director says.
Know your lines and don't bump into the scenery.
And so Drew says, we're going to do this, and I said, I am completely on board.
And that's kind of what I expected, because you do deal with that section absolutely masterfully. And
I will take that as a compliment.
No, it was intended to be. It was all intended to be as a compliment. I know. There are several sections of your performance that I was talking to Brendan before some of you guys got here, and we were talking about the scene where he's discussing his issue. And there's this amazing scene where the two of you are having a conversation, and he makes a statement, and I don't know spoilers here, but he makes a statement that you're not sure how to take, and as Andrew was saying, he kept saying, when you think it's too long, it's not long enough. But you had not the snake, the pause, and the number of reactions that you went through leading up to your first line, and then his response, and that sequence. Even if you just put that up, that's your trailer right there. that long pause, and all of the expressions that you go through in doing that are absolutely wonderful. And that was the other night, which I was telling Andrew before you got here, that I've seen it 4 times, and every time the audience has reacted very differently. I have seen it where people were wrapped up in the surrealist part, where they were taking it very seriously, and they were, very much going on the journey. I've been at places where at the funny parts there's a chuckle. And then last Saturday, if you remember, the audience was just chortling for 35-40% of the movie. It was just, I was telling Andrew, I was sitting there going, that is funny enough to laugh. Before I was going, that's funny. But, I was like, no, I can laugh for that. It actually is okay. And so I even let a few guffaws out myself.
Yeah, you can laugh at all of it.
Oh, the entire thing.
Yeah.
One of the things about creating art is you can't tuck it away in a drawer. You have to put it out there in the world, and you have to realize that we do not control other people's reception or reaction.
And that's one of the things I really, really appreciated about this, as I do with because for me, if it's Lynch, if it's Del Toro, if it's Anderson, if it's that French guy, I can't remember off the top of my head, that did the City of Lost Children.
Oh yeah.
And the one about the butcher shop, called the butcher shop.
Yeah.
I can't remember his name, but those are my movies, right? Something off center is always my movie. And so, like I said, from the very first instant of this coming on the screen, I went, and it did not let me down. 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 And it did What was it? And again, if we can do it without doing too many spoilers, and again, this one's for Dorian. Did you have a favorite part of your role, or a favorite aspect to your character that you really enjoyed playing? Because both of you seem to bury yourselves in the character quite well, and I'm curious if you even liked your character, let alone if there were parts of your performance that you had more fun with.
Well, I think she was indeed played very sad. It's right there in the header, the dating, depression, and mimes. Depression and fear are very powerful demotivators. So hearkening back to your comment about us talking past each other and never fully connecting, depression and fear are powerful demotivators. And so even though that desire to connect was there, it didn't really happen. And so one of the things about theater or art is leave them wanting more, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that we did that. I think we accomplished that.
Well, and I think, calling it Sandwichland, and again, this is, I'll ask any of the three, but, it's called Sandwichland. There is a small section of very, very, very very wonderful section where you actually are talking about sandwiches.
That was a lot of stream of consciousness.
But the beauty of it is the rest of it is you guys making the sandwiches. And it then becomes a metaphor for especially the two of you, because it's the two of you that are having that conversation about different types of sandwiches and you wondering if they're made differently in different places and all of this. It becomes this great metaphor for your friendship or relationship or love affair or whatever it is you have, which each time I see it, it's something different. Why did you come up? What came up? How did you get to the sandwiches, Andrew? That's my biggest question. I think it's a perfect framing. How did you get there?
So the title it came from, well, we needed a title, but it comes from I don't know. I think this was one of the questions, and I was surprised people didn't ask it every night, but I had somebody in the audience, why Sandwichland? And it comes from, I had this terrible, maybe 2-week stint at this job in Seattle where I was working in this cafe. And the owner was just a monster. To the point where you'd show up 30 seconds late and he'd have you go home. And I was just like, wow, this is this is next level.
Yeah.
But one of the things he did was if you were too slow at making coffee, because coffee's a very,
It's Seattle.
Yeah, it's Seattle.
Starbucks had to create a new brand so they could have one on every corner, not just every other corner.
Being a barista is you have to be very quick.
It's demanding.
And it's very demanding, and you also have to be everyone's therapist at the same time. So,
for the other baristas or for you?
yeah, everyone. Yes. And if you were too slow at the machine, he would put you in Sandwichland, where you would be putting together breakfast sandwiches, slicing bagels in half, putting them in the toaster, microwaving eggs in a plastic container. And I just was like, I never forgot that. And I was just like, this is really, I was just kind of blown away by the irony of it and the metaphor for our society in general. And how, it felt like, if you don't meet a certain standard,
punished for the slightest infraction.
Yeah, you're punished for the you're demonized for not meeting A, B, or C. So Sandwichland was, I just kind of thought of Fresno in a lot of ways. If you're too slow,
you end up back in Fresno.
Yeah, which Fresno, it gets
bumper sticker wisdom right there.
It gets a bad rap.
Yeah, it does.
And for good reasons. And a lot of...
No. I have a very...
That's a whole different other show.
But I will.
It's almost every other show.
I will say, as much as I have put it down in the past and how I vocalized it, I have never really been as creatively motivated in another city. There's something about the spiritual nature of this city and the underlying sadness of it, and the kind of failure to launch sort of aesthetic. Things will start getting, buildings will start to go up, and then it's like they run out of money and then they just sit there unfinished.
Yep.
And I just became, as a visual artist, I just sort of, it just became like my own creative universe.
I have a number of friends all over the place, and I'll have people that come into Fresno who have money, and they'll look around and go, look at all the potential. And I'm like, those are the words they always say, look at all the potential. And
new tagline for Fresno. Fresno, look at all the potential.
But I always tell them, don't bother, because you're not going to be able to do it. The old guard in this city is so strong and has always been, that there are only a few little carve-outs, and we happen to be in one of them, and that's just between us. We don't live in the rest of Fresno. We live in a slightly different place, but in some ways, your film is a love story to portions of Fresno. And Brendan, you had a thought.
I was saying, like, well, we really want to change that. Like, there is a lot of potential. There's a lot of great actors here. There's a lot of great writers, great cinematographers, a lot of very smart people who, I guess, like in the film, they're just talking past each other. Yep. It's really hard to put a good team together. And everyone on this team was heavenly. It was absolutely fantastic to work on this movie. Drew was great. Dorian was great. I mean, even the extras that we got, Tosh was fantastic. It was everything. Everyone we had it came from the heart.
Yeah.
And I think that comes out in a lot of the film.
So, Andrew, let's talk about the love affair to Fresno. Most of your exteriors are Tower District, and some of them are a little grungy, and some of them are not. There are other shots of North Fresno where Dorian's space is, and as I mentioned before, there are a couple of shots where in your little space where you did some amazing framing. There's two shots of Dorian where there's this mirror right behind her, and like a little halo, like the Madonna, right? Just beautiful. It's the little things that really make some of these scenes, but. Most of the exteriors, majority of the exteriors, some of the graffiti isn't, but the majority of the exteriors are Tower. And I'd love to hear your thoughts about that. And why you picked the places that you picked. Was it because they were available, or because they were...
No, it was very much on purpose. It was very intentional. Tower is the only, this might be a hot take, but it's the only section of the city that really, to me, is a city. It's really the only functioning walkable neighborhood with a built-in community, and I don't think I could live anywhere else in the city. I've been to Clovis.
I'm so sorry.
And to each their own. I know a lot of people, they're kind of taken in by this notion of convenience. They like having, grocery stores near them. They like sort of a sense of security. Tower is very rough, but as a creative person, I'm 34 now, which is it's surreal, but I've learned that I've come to appreciate the underdog. I don't know if that's Tower, is very much representative of that underdog spirit.
If it weren't for the Tower, I would not be living in Fresno, and and that is a very strange way to put it, because when we came back here, I was offered a job here in town, and I needed an employer in order to get a mortgage. I'd been working as a consultant, as self-employed. And it was like, and my wife was like, you don't want to go back to Fresno. And I was like, well, I need the mortgage in order to get a house, and I needed to buy a new car because ours got wrecked in a blizzard. And we were in Cleveland. And I literally said, if I can pick where we live, I can make it work for a short period of time. Now, when we first got married, I was working at UCLA. We were living in Westwood, right? There were, everything was close, everything was within walking distance, all of that. And I said, if I can pick where we live, we can make it work temporarily. Mm-hmm. And that was 25 years ago. Yeah. And I will die in that house, and I'm perfectly content. I almost never leave the district if I can help it. Yeah. We're going to take a real quick break, and I want to bring Tosh Martin in, who's the one voice we haven't heard. We're going to bring Tosh and Andrew back, and probably either Brendan or Dorian will decide during the break. But we're going to bring Tosh in, and you're listening to The Struggle on 88.1 KFCF.
On the Bioneers.
On a very extreme version of rights of nature, we're protecting all nature and giving it a Bill of Rights like personhood. That's the strongest way we can protect nature.
We hear how tribal nations in the U.S. are making groundbreaking laws in the quest to legally recognize nature's right to exist, flourish, regenerate, and evolve on Bioneers Radio.
The Bioneers, Thursdays at 3:30 on 88.1 FM, KFCF Fresno, Free Speech Radio.
Hey, where can I learn about bears in Sequoia Kings Canyon?
Or how the moon affects how bats hunt.
Or healthcare in America.
Or how immunity drives bird evolution.
Zombie fungi.
Soundscapes in national parks.
All that, tune into Science, A Candle in the Dark, our monthly conversation about science and how it illuminates our lives.
Where local valley scientists tell us about amazing discoveries right here in Central California.
Every fourth Thursday of the month at 3 p.m.
on 88.1 FM, KFCF Fresno. Until then, remember, science is a verb.
And welcome back to The Struggle on 88.1 KFCF. I'm Dr. Michael Eisinger. Tonight I'm joined by Andrew Champagne, Dorian Follansby. I'm so sorry. Brendan Mustachola. I was almost going to get it.
Don't worry about it.
And Tosh Martin.
Hello.
Tosh, how are you? Welcome to the circle. Tosh, you had a couple of different hats you wore in this production.
Possibly.
That you can admit to. You were the co-worker of the main character, and had some wonderful in-office scenes. Half the time, I don't know if you're really there or not. You're part of the Are You the Dream or the Dreamer? And then you show up in some of the very weirdest places. So as an actor, you have that particular hat, but you also were involved in some of the editing and in the sound design, if I understand correctly. Is that right? Yeah. So, which did you prefer, the technical side or the on-camera side?
Neither.
Yeah. So you loved them both, is what you're saying. Oh, okay. You had no preference, so you preferred them both. How did you get dragged into playing the lovely character that you play? And how much of that was ad-lib and how much of it was scripted?
So there was a script for my scene. I don't think I said any of it. I really don't. I think it was just... I think the one thing Drew wanted me to say was... is just talking about have you seen the news lately?
Oh, yeah. That was important.
And that was it. I think the rest I just kind of blurted out. I didn't know every take was different, what I said. So
it was really good. So on the technical side, you were involved in both the editing and the sound design.
Yeah.
And the sound design, this is for both you and Andrew. Number one, I love the fact that you used all royalty-free material.
Yeah.
So some of that background music you probably got off of a royalty-free site someplace, and then the rest of it was old songs that are out of copyright. And I thought it was an amazing soundtrack. combined with the sound design, because that's whether you're talking Jacques Tati or you're talking Lynch, it is the selective use of sound, right? Mm-hmm. You watch Tati and all of this stuff is going on, but the only thing you hear is the one sound he wants you to focus on. Yeah. Everything else is dead. And there are sections of this film that I was going Tati, and other sections I was going Lynch, and other sections I was going Del Toro, and I don't mean that in any way to say that your work is the least bit derivative, because of the way you've put it together. It is your film, and I love it. So I was wondering, were those actual influences, or were you just stumbling onto some brilliant stuff?
Do you want to
go ahead?
So first, sound design is probably my favorite part of the process, because it really does go a long way with, you can show a blank office. For example, we have the office sequence, and I was so drawn by, because the office was abandoned.
Right, there was nothing but furniture, nothing on the walls, nothing on the desks.
Chairs were stacked. It was a little off, and I was just like, oh, how wonderful. Like this dystopian capitalistic, sort of society, and just adding, that low frequency, sort of low bass, accomplishes so much. And that's why when you go and you see any horror film and you're seeing it in the theater and you hear you kind of just hear the walls shake a little bit. That's always been, as a kid, I've always been I want to do that. I want to, I was like, I want to...
Those cellos to make the whole thing.
I just want to, capture that feeling of, and I think my entire adult life, I'm trying to recreate the excitement and the feeling of, being a child and experiencing, cinema for the first time, different facets of cinema. And sounds were always just, a big part of that. The only royalty-free stuff we used were the two old songs, the two jazz songs, and then everything else. I think between Tosh and I have this old retro synth player. Yeah,
that works. It works.
I think Tosh and I both took turns, sort of, like experimenting with it in different, low frequencies. What happens if we, fiddle with this aspect, and that's what.
As David Bowie said, as soon as we got new equipment, we tried to figure out ways to break it. That's true. Why? This is the sound they gave us. I don't like that sound. What can I do to make it sound something different? So it's supposed to sound like an accordion. I don't want an accordion. I want an accordion, a screamo accordion, or some bizarre thing like that. Yes.
I noticed something happened when we were editing, that suddenly we all didn't realize it, but we were all kind of going for a Paul Thomas Anderson feel with the sound design. Like, at one point, everyone just started talking about Paul Thomas Anderson. We did.
Maybe.
No, we did.
Yeah. We talked about There Will Be Blood.
Punch Drunk Love and There Will Be Blood. Punch Drunk Love.
Yeah, maybe I was just...
It was a subconscious thing, but we all just realized, we like his sound designs, too.
That is true.
My point is, it was... All this stuff was coming from the gut. But, I don't remember them really saying, let's do a Del Toro thing. Let's do a David Lynch thing. But they know exactly what they want, and they know what they like, and they were able to just work together so well.
Well, Tosh, since everybody's talking about you, how about your turn?
Yeah.
I just remember one of the scenes, the scene where Brendan and Dorian are just sitting there.
Is this the one where he's on the bed and she's on the floor?
Yes, that scene. I just remember every time I was at Drew's place editing, when we were editing, I was like, I need to make a little song for this part. And I think I did 27 different things on a keyboard. And then once we finally got the one to where that matched perfectly to what Dorian was saying, it just I'm like, this is it. I was just watching it, and then once we put it in, I'm like, yeah, finally.
Yeah, there was nothing in the sound design or in the editing that that stood out. There were, and I love the fact, as I mentioned earlier, that you go from jump cuts to the cuts back and forth between black and white and color. You didn't do anywhere it was changing format much, but you did do the color in black and white, which I thought was really effective. And the sound, there are a couple of scenes early on where it's not clear what's going on the screen, and you have the sound is confusion, the image is confusion, and the two together are so powerful. All you can do is sit there and go, "What are they doing?" Yes, the fourth time I watched it, it's like I knew it was coming, and I'm sitting there, I'm just staring at the screen, going, "All right, I know it's got to be and it was. I'm pretty sure it was the two main characters." They weren't dancing though in the middle of the living room.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
That part.
Yeah.
I think that's an amazing little sequence there. So, I hate to ask you this, but what's next? Do you know, or have you started to have talks? Are these people part of what's coming next, or
yeah? I don't think. Brendan's been an emotional support system and a collaborator for too long now. Can't get rid of him. I think Tosh is probably here to stay. Same with, we just, this particular group, I think we got along pretty well. I think, there were frustrations in some aspects of the process, but I think what we learned is communication is key.
So how much of the casting was you were putting this story together in your head and you were picking the people to play it, as opposed to you were writing the characters and then looking for the people to play them?
No, I never write the characters and look, I always start a project, and I'll go around town, and comedy was really just an eye-opener to how much talent was in this city, and not just how much talent was there, but how much they were wasting it. Telling,
mediocre joke.
Man walks into a bar.
Yeah, I know, and I was...
And said ouch.
And I don't want to say that to discredit anybody, and there's a bunch of really gifted comedians in the city. But I was just like, wow, and I think I've always had an eye for hearing how somebody talks and knowing how, what performance, because if somebody goes up on stage and says something, chances are, that's one of the hardest things to do, is try to be funny in a room full of people. And if they can go up on stage and
even try
and accomplish it, there is a 90% chance, I know that sounds a little high, but I'm fairly certain that they can pull off something dramatic.
If you can be funny, you can act. I mean, they always say, well, comedy is the hardest and all that stuff, but no, it's true.
Yeah, so, and I think with Dorian and Brendan specifically, just seeing their chemistry outside of, just seeing their chemistry in real life, I was like, you know what, I want to put that on film. And I think the idea just sort of was molded around that. And they both did. They
were amazing. They both were amazing.
Yeah, they both blew me away. And I'm just,
No, we sound like we're filling the room up with superlatives, but I hate to say it. They did an amazing job.
Yep.
Tosh, you are hilarious and scary at the same time.
Yeah, thank you.
No, I'm serious.
It's my vibe.
Yeah, I saw your kid. Yeah, he's not afraid of you.
Some days.
Yeah, okay. No, I think and that's why I was curious as to whether because there are elements of those people in these actors, but I don't think that they are these characters. I think that there's just elements there.
No, yeah, that's always something that I've loved doing, is taking elements of truth and applying it, to untruths.
So are we going to have another film next year at Rogue, or in a couple of years we're going to be able to have a film festival, or where are we headed here?
I've learned that I'm much more effective as my own creative entity. I should not be in charge of festivals, and I should not be running comedy events. But one of the things I absolutely would love to see, and that's why I love Alicia at Labyrinth, and everything that she's trying to accomplish, and Root Access, and just there's these community sort of driven collectives that were not here 10 years ago,
right?
And they are bringing a bunch of very talented and smart people together, which growing up here didn't exist. At least not in my,
Yep. We've always had a good slot of musicians. There's a core of Tower musicians going back 60, 70 years that are amazing. It's like you go and you go, why didn't you make it? What did you do wrong? Because they're so good.
Yeah.
And many of them, and many of them is because they want to do what they want to do, not what the world wants them to do, and so they're still here doing what they've been doing. But the performing arts, the venues that we've had, Roger Rocca and Second Space is the two big ones. They are what they are. Roger Rocca is a whole bunch of happy jazz hands, and they're going to say they were in the same 12 musicals. I have seen Fiddler on the Roof there in 1980, and I just saw it again last week, right? And you know what? It wasn't all that different. It was less jazz hands this time than last time, but other than that, it was, it hasn't, because they just do the same stuff over and over and over again, the same shows over and over.
Yeah.
And it's very mainstream, even though both theaters are in the Tower. I saw my sister Eileen about the arrival of Italian immigrants, and I was like, or Irish immigrants, is like, why don't we take that and we'll make it Hispanic immigrants, and we'll update the story and make it something useful, but it's Second Space, and so it never would happen. But there are now these places like the little theater down at Hearts Haven, like the Vista Theater.
Hearts Haven, they're doing good work.
And at Vista and at Labyrinth, those three primarily.
Which has been very inspiring. It's kept me sane.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that they're providing these spaces, because I think that's the one thing that people don't really realize is if we don't have these spaces, and when I'm saying space in the actual literal sense of the word, because you can't get that same sense of community online. You have to be in a room with people.
Even for a film, and like I said, I've seen it 4 times now, and each time I've seen it, the audience has read it differently.
Yeah.
And I've had a different experience every time I saw it, because the audience reacted differently to the same exact visuals and the same audio. And so if you don't have that, it's just like we were talking earlier about Rocky Horror and a bunch of other stuff. Watching Rocky Horror off the DVD and watching it in a theater where people know what they're doing are two completely different experiences. Yeah. And I think this is the same, you talk about video, and it's like, well, yeah, you could just put that up on YouTube and everybody could get to watch it, and you have millions of views and everybody will love it, and yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
But that's not the same as putting it in a room, even with a dozen or 15 of us.
We've had so many people message us the week of Rogue.
Oh, I don't blame them.
And I don't think they weren't doing it from a mean place. They weren't doing it, but I wanted to stress how important it is to experience works in person. And I know people have lives, and I know, people can't always make screenings, but it is one of the things I'm hoping for the future is that more filmmakers, will, because it's so inexpensive now, compared to
what did that 35 minutes cost you to produce? I mean, I'm sure you didn't pay scale and all of that stuff to the actors, but
none of us made any money.
Right, exactly. But I mean, it was a volunteer project. But what did it actually cost for your group to produce this movie?
Well, I think
ballpark.
I think the most expensive aspect of this film was showing it. I think
that really is it.
I think
getting the venue,
the Rogue fees, I think the film itself, I think our time, I think that's always something that's invaluable. And this group of people, came together and, volunteered their time to create this experience for people.
Two things. We've only got about 6 minutes left here. The first thing is, when's the next showing?
The next showing is tonight, at 8:00.
Labyrinth.
At the Labyrinth?
At Labyrinth.
It's the last showing.
It's the last showing
for a while.
as of now. We've had people reach out to us and inquire about the film if, we'd be interested in letting them show it. So I can't give out too much.
Until it's verified.
Yeah, until it's verified, I can't give out too much information about that.
So if I wanted to find out when you do get that information, where would I go?
That's something that we should have thought through more.
Is there a Facebook page?
There's my personal Instagram that I think has been the main source of advertisement. We printed posters. Yeah, we didn't really.
What size are the posters?
We
18
8 by 11. Yeah, I know.
Oh, none of the bigger ones.
But
not yet.
And usually, I have it together when it comes to marketing a little bit more. When I was doing comedy events, I was really getting the word out there. For this, it was such an emotional, it was such a draining experience, in a good way, that I just didn't have any mental bandwidth left to really, go around town and, try to get that synergetic marketing effect.
So if people want to find this, they can go to Instagram. They can search for Andrew Champagne, just like the bubbly.
DRW Champagne, just like the alcoholic beverage. And I'm on Instagram. That's where really all the info is right now at the moment.
So we can find out when the next showing is. Tonight it is at 8:00 at the Labyrinth, $15 at the door.
$15, but I want to stress this. Bring your friends. We'll get you in for $5. Really. Yeah, really. It's never.
We want people to show up.
I want people to see it. I mean, I really do.
This has never really been about the money. The reason why we're just trying to cover our nugget. But we never had any intention of making money off this. It was,
Dorian's over here going, I did. Have you considered shopping this as maybe a CV piece, a resume piece, possibly getting in the guild and maybe doing something?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's gonna enter the festival circuit. We're gonna try. I mean, the worst they can do is say no.
Exactly.
So our first stop is hopefully Olympia next month, and then New York maybe in November. So it's a new experience for me, and I think it's a new experience for all of us. And as for the next project, since we're so new at it, we're just really trying to figure out. I've always loved working within our means and not really spending a bunch of money, but we need better equipment. So
what you were able to do, I don't know how much of it was done in post and how much of it was done in camera, but what you were able to do with whatever it was you had, you did. Other than if you had a drone to get some aerial shots, I can't think of much that you weren't able to at least. There was nothing there that you attempted that didn't work. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, no, we did a really good job at, I think, we had struggles with audio. I think audio is the Achilles heel of every, new filmmaker. But
you did a big portion of it with, in silence.
Yeah.
A lot of it was just sound, music, and... And mime.
And that was knowing that what we had to work with and our limitations. We didn't want to have, these long drawn out dialogue sequences because we knew how difficult that was to capture in real time, especially in public places. So it was really just a creative test to see, what we can create within our means, what we had access to. And we're hoping to, raise money and get to work again.
Andrew Champagne, writer, director, producer. Dorian Brendan, Tosh. I want to thank you all for spending the last hour with me, and we will be back again next week. I think I have a special show for you next week. The news is next. You've been listening to The Struggle on 88.1 KFCF Fresno. I'm Dr. Michael Eisinger, and I'll talk to you next time.